Well, hello, friends, and welcome to the Hot 100 show. I'm Chez Sievers. We got Brentt, Eads on the line all the way from Huntington Beach, and Brittany Connors over here.
Hey, guys.
Our content marketer extraordinaire.
Yay.
So, Brentt, how are you?
I'm good.
Well,
Fun time for softball fans, College World Series.
so much. And, before we actually kind of dive into the topics we have lined up today, just tragic news from Forney, Texas. Emily Galliano was killed last night. She was a member of the Texas Glory 16U team. Really tragic news. Forney High School was set to play continue playoffs today, and we just want to extend our prayers and our thoughts with the family and friends of the Gallianos. And Brentt, you wanted to mention another. We hate to start today in a somber mood, but we have a tight knit community here with softball friends and family, and it's important that we keep those relationships and our thoughts with those people.
Yeah, thanks, Chez. As you said, we love our jobs. We love being in softball. We love the athletes, the players, coaches. But when you have a huge community, you're going to have tragedies, be it illnesses or accidents. And the Lady Lightning organization out of North Carolina, John Corden's organization, a week ago lost a beloved coach, Jeff Fain. He had some heart problems a couple weeks before. They put a stent in his heart, and he looked like he was on the road to recovery. He was actually out of practice, and then a couple of days later, about a week ago, he just didn't wake up. So our thoughts and prayers go out to the Lady Lightning organization as well as Kevin Shelton's Texas Glory. It's a sad time for both of these organizations. We wish them well.
Yeah, our deepest thoughts and prayers go out to those families. Wow, it's kind of hard to even get into the show after thinking about those tragic losses in the community. But we will forge on because, like the players and coaches, we love this sport, and we're going to continue to grow it. Like always, for those of you on Facebook, send in your questions, your comments, your shout outs. We definitely want to hear from you. In other news, Brentt, this is slightly off topic, and we covered it a little bit on Here's the Deal on Monday. But the big news in college softball is Minnesota going unseeded. What are your thoughts on this? And just to preface this, Minnesota's got the best record in the country. They've also been ranked number 1 this week for the first time all season. And they head into Tuscaloosa unseeded. So potentially they're going to face a former Women's College World Series participant in last season. And if they walk out of the Tuscaloosa region, they could potentially face the Florida Gators. Brentt, what are your thoughts?
I was shocked. I was watching the show, as probably many of us or most of us were. When they had Minnesota in that bracket, my jaw hit the ground. I couldn't believe it. I think we all assumed that they would host. They'd be one of the 16 hosts, and to not even be seeded. I love the symbolic gesture in an FCA pool where the 18 coaches put the number 1. I'm strongly in the camp of, what were they, 54-3, playing in the Big Ten. And I love what Coach Alistair said afterwards. He said, we scheduled hard. We don't fault us if some teams didn't rise up to what they were expected to do. I mean, where did they went to LSU, I think, and they played Texas and Fresno State. And obviously the Big Ten. I mean, Michigan was in the national championship game 2 years ago. They did everything they had to do. And I didn't think it's fair. And you could go strength of schedule and all that, but to not be in one of the top 16 when you were at the time ranked number 2, now number 1, we have to be impartial, but part of me is rooting for Minnesota just because, first of all, they're not a typical softball or traditional softball power. So for them, especially coming out of the Midwest as they are. I would just like to see them win, and to not the expense of anybody else. Because listen, we're all Florida State we're all fans of the sport. But the way that went down, I just thought that was grossly unfair. They should have at least been seeded, in my opinion.
I understand the RPI logic as far as sticking to your formulas and whatnot. But at some point, how do you penalize a team who doesn't play in necessarily the toughest conference in the nation? How do you penalize them for that? We've seen all 13 teams from the SEC make the tournament, which is like a moment in history that we should definitely just take a look at the growth of the SEC. But at the same time, there should be exceptions to the rule. And I would stand by Minnesota and say they are an exception to that rule. They may not play in the SEC, but they didn't play a home game, I believe, not until late March. I mean, you're talking about a team that was on the road for a very, very long time. Now, I'm sure that this will affect how Coach Allister goes out and schedules her preseason. But I don't know how you can outright win the Big Ten conference season and then win the Big Ten tournament and throw the first no-hitter that's ever been thrown in the Big Ten and beat LSU and travel all across the country competing against different teams across conferences and not be seeded. As I said before, it's a shame. And, I know like the NCAA committee is kind of taking a beating right now, but I think they should sort of reevaluate some of those special cases. You're fortunate to play in the SEC because all of those teams almost every team is ranked in the top 25. Not all of them, but an overwhelming majority. But needless to say, it doesn't change the fact that Minnesota still has to go to Tuscaloosa. And play a very, very tough region with fans. I would probably say every night's going to be sold out if Alabama's playing.
Yeah.
But moving on, as we're winding down in the season, we've got coaching changes and openings. A few that we're going to talk about. A couple in the ACC. So we're talking Georgia Tech and Clemson. So, actually another opening is New Mexico. Brentt, what do you make of some of these coaching changes or new coaching openings, and how is that going to affect recruiting?
I think it's fascinating. We see what Coach Young is doing at Duke. Now Clemson, and you and I were talking right before we started how Clemson is a power in most sports. Just won the football national championship. So I think it's going to really impact not just recruiting in the ACC, but also the SEC, the whole East Coast, really, because athletes are going to want to go and play and establish a new paradigm at a school like Clemson. It's a great school, beautiful area. The chance to play early is attractive. You're in a Power 5 conference. And so the North Carolina, South Carolinas, obviously they're going to be impacted, but even down into Georgia, Florida, the Tennessees, I think it's going to have a ripple effect, and it's going to be really interesting. It's going to be fun to watch. I think Clemson should be competitive like Duke. I mean, Duke's a great academic school. For these schools to come in and jump in the sport, number one, it's great for softball. More scholarships, more teams, more visibility. But I think it's going to be fun because it's going to make it that much more competitive, especially in the ACC and SEC.
Well, I think it's really interesting to look at the rise of the SEC and how that's coincided with the top recruits in the nation. Brentt, you've been doing the Hot 100 ranking since 2014, and now we're seeing this 2021 class with an uptick of kids from the South. Really getting out there and competing. I'm very excited to see what this next wave of recruits are going to do over the next handful of years. And I think the growth of the ACC is only going to expand the level of talent on the East Coast and the Southeast, just the way that it is now. And I think the SEC is a huge. The word is slipping my mind, but they kind of got the wheels in motion for some of those great athletes to get involved in softball. We've seen so many football players who have daughters go out and play softball and be very, very successful. Right. To come to mind, the Fagans. The Fagans, they are like physical softball specimens who come from a line of a strong line of athletes. And I think we're going to see more of that. Obviously, we've done players on TJ Hushmanzada, his daughters being heavily recruited. Malloy from Seattle.
Lawyer.
Yeah. I mean, there's just so many of these great athletes coming from, former football players. And just that level of competitiveness is handed down to their daughters, and it piques the interest of softball even more from former football stars.
Yeah, a comment on that, Chez. I love talking to a TJ or some of these football players, and as you may know, or some people may know, I come from a football background. And it's exciting. It's fun to see these dads who were great athletes, many played at the NFL level, almost get like a new life. It's like their kids with Christmas again, because their daughters are playing and they see the pure love of the sport. And they played at, it was a business for them. They made money at it. But for them to see their daughters doing it and loving it, and some of them, like a TJ, becoming a full-time coach, it's like you said, it's exciting. But going back to the point about these new colleges, there is that passion. There's, they love their sports in the South. There's no doubt about that. And they've fallen in love with softball. And all of these states now are getting very competitive. The North Carolinas, and we're excited, in a week or so, we're going to be live streaming on FloSoftball.com, the North Carolina Softball High School State Championship. And you're going to see great levels of competition there. But it's exciting to see that softball used to be just pockets. And another point I was thinking while you're talking about that is some of these powerhouses, the Alabamas and Floridas, they've had the success going out to California. Well, they're going to have to be careful guarding their backyards now, because Clemson and the Dukes and some of these new schools are going to come in, and they're going to start putting up fences around local talent, be it South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia. And you can only get so many locally, and there's some great players locally that can't go to a Florida or a Georgia or an LSU or an Alabama, and Clemson and Duke kind of schools are going to benefit. We've already seen Duke has picked up some Hot 100 players in other classes. So Marissa Young is doing a good job, but it's not hard to sell when you've got a great school academically and you have an opportunity to come in and play right away. Those are two good recruiting
and
tools.
A brand new stadium.
Exactly.
That couldn't hurt. And North Carolina is just beautiful. It's not that tough of a sell. But I would definitely anticipate the growth of softball in South Carolina and North Carolina to expand over the next 5 to 10 years. Tell us your thoughts. What do you think about new programs like Clemson and potentially, other programs that we may see open up softball? I would not be surprised to see possibly a TCU, or now I'm just speculating right now. Maybe even a Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt obviously has a long history of baseball championships with Coach Corbin, but I would love to see a softball program there that has a rich tradition in baseball. Brentt, who do you think has the potential of opening up a program?
Wow, that's a good question. I'll tell you one that I think we were all waiting someday out here in the West is, why does USC not have a softball team? they
right?
would be instantly a top 10 team with all the talent in Southern California, but I don't understand all the Title IX and the gender equity and all the cost and all that. But I don't know. Colorado would see, the weather is prohibitive, but BYU and Utah are doing very well. Love to see Colorado pick up one.
Yeah.
I'm just more speculating across the country. But look at Minnesota again. Let's go back to them. They have proven that you can win, and you wouldn't think of Minnesota and the weather situation being ideal, but it can happen, and it just takes the effort and the dedication to it. So I would say any university that fields, athletics and has a good, strong fan base and is a good academic school, anybody is a potential candidate.
It looks like we have a question coming in from Facebook. Brittany, what do you got?
Well, Allison Williams agreed with your comment earlier, Chez. She says that Vanderbilt needs a program. And then Johnny G brings up a good one. Where's TCU softball?
Yeah, great question. I can't tell you the avid softball fans in the state of Texas, just sports fans in general. I would love to see a program in Fort Worth. First of all, I love Fort Worth. Great city. And you know what's interesting, Brentt? There are a ton of kids going to school from California to TCU. I just saw a story in my feed. A football player from Compton got a scholarship to TCU, and now he's off to Oxford as a Rhodes Scholar. Just fascinating. But if that job opens up, I would expect a good pool of coaches to be up for that job. Obviously, they would add to the Big 12, which is kind of been so-so. I mean, strong talent, obviously, with 4 Big 12 teams making the tournament. But I certainly think that they can become a stronger conference. That's in my personal opinion.
Well, Chez, I think what's going to happen is you'll be the head coach. I'll be
geez. You'll be my recruiter.
I'll be the recruiting coordinator, and Brittany can be the softball ops.
Okay, yeah, she's in charge of social. We'll get all the people to like our page.
Hey, Annie, I know you're out there. Will you do some recruiting for us?
We don't care about the wins in the field.
Yeah, I don't know if I'll be putting back the coaching hat anytime soon.
Well, we hope not. I hope you'll stay with us for a while.
Yeah. But moving on to Hot 100. Brent, I've been receiving some emails from parents from the Northeast and Midwest. They want the love, Brent, and they want to know, why aren't some of these players being highlighted or talked about? And, we have a difficult job as it is with being a team, a small team. But what do you have to say to some of those? I mean, it's much kind of like the Minnesota situation, right? Yeah. Teens from not necessarily hotbeds, but what would you say to those parents to help get those players kind of like on our radar?
Well, first of all, I would say the Midwest, we're well represented in the Midwest. I mean, we've got several Indiana players, a lot of Ohio players. Ohio is starting to get stronger and stronger. Illinois is always strong. We've got players. We've had like a Sid Supple, from Wisconsin.
Supplé.
Yeah. I will forever. And
I'm looking out for you, Sydney. Supplé.
Yeah,
Sydney Supplé.
And what's funny is I lived in France. I should know that. It's a French thing. But we are strong in the Midwest. And, in the East, we've had a lot of Pennsylvania, obviously with Pennsylvania Chaos and Maggie Ballant, and we've had a Chaos player in this Hot 100, and we've had Abby Oda from Connecticut, and we have someone from New York. I would just say, we talked about this topic last week. You have to be in a visible place. You have to be on a team that's going to be seen, and it has to be at these tournaments where coaches are going to be. And so it's one of those where it takes money to make money. Well, it takes visibility to get more visibility. You have to be on a visible team in a visible opportunity, meaning a high-level, high-visible tournament, to get seen and to get appreciated. And we're not excluding the Northeast. We have great friends like Dave Lottie, Rhode Island Thunder, and like I said, the PA Chaos. And there are organizations that are strong in the Midwest, and obviously not only of the Beverly Bandits, Illinois Chill, Ohio Hawks, Ohio Outlaws, but we could go Indiana Magic. we look at these organizations that typically play at the PGF national kind of level, or the JO Cup or whatever it is, and that's where you're seen. So if you're seen on these big stages, then you tend to be more highly touted. So that's it's no secret. It's not like we're trying to hide anybody. In fact, we've been trying to research. Brittany and I, we heard about a great player out of Mobile, Alabama, plays for the Mobile Thrillers, that we're trying to get more information on. And in a future Hot 100, she will probably make the list. But we just don't have enough information on her. And that's the key, folks, is if you want to get seen, and we get information from club coaches, especially college coaches and scouts. Obviously, college coaches can't talk about players publicly, but sometimes, and we obviously go to events and tournaments ourselves. But we can't write about you and tell the world how great you are if we don't know about you. So someone's got to be your mouthpiece, be it your club coach or somebody. So, and one last thing, Chez, on this question, I know I'm getting wordy, is this is the time I hate, because you and I got an email, and we'll share this, and we won't mention names, but someone just went off on saying that one of the players we had in the Hot 100 didn't throw as fast as she said she did. She wasn't even on this team. She didn't play in this tournament. And I went to the club coach, and he goes, "Oh, that's a parent in our organization that's got sour grapes." And so it's like, uh-oh. So we're seeing coaches that are saying, "Hey, that girl's no good," and and a lot of bickering and all that. And it's like, people, this isn't brain surgery. We're trying to honor these athletes, but also realize these are 8th graders, and this is our first effort in corralling 500 players into one list. And we will, in the future, update this list. If you're not on this list, go out there, work hard, show us that you deserve to be on this list. If you're on this list, you better keep working hard, because there's a lot of girls that are coming from behind and want to knock you off this list. And that will happen. I bet you the next time we update this Hot 100 list, this 2021, we will probably have a change of as many 30, 40, as many as 50 players. Because new players will emerge, players will get better, some players will drop back. So are we territorial? Well, yeah, California's got the numbers. Texas, you just mentioned, is passionate about their softball. The South is getting strong. But if you're deserving in the Northeast, be it from New York, Connecticut, even Rhode Island, in the Midwest, we certainly know about you. We will find you at some point. Just be patient, and just know we're doing the best we can, but we're not trying to play favorites.
Absolutely. Well said, Brentt. And it looks like we got a question from Facebook. Brittany, what do you got?
Yes, Lori has asked what the best camps are to get your kid or someone noticed.
Best camps. Oh, great question. I get asked this quite a bit. In my opinion, go ahead, Brentt. You jump in.
Well, there's several schools of thought. I mean, I'm a fan of what On Deck Softball does. If you can get to one of their events, Derek and Joanne Allister travel the country. They literally get in a motorhome and travel the country. If you're on their system, then you're going to get noticed. I think college camps too. If you're interested in a particular school and you want to get noticed, you can go to a college camp or clinic or something. That's one way to do it. On the other side, I would be careful of, like, there's 1,000 camps out there, and be careful and do your homework. And if they're saying that so-and-so coach is coming, just check it out. Just make sure that there are coaches that will be there, because I've had a lot of complaints from parents saying, "Hey, we went to this camp and they promised that so-and-so from college would be there, and there wasn't anybody there." But I think college camps, we've talked about Florida State does a great job. Pretty much any college locally, if you want to go, that's one way to get seen and discovered. And the other advantage of doing that is if you get a registered or a measured time there that's authentic, then you can use that. If you're a slapper and you run a 2.7 at a camp at, I'm making this up, like Alabama, that's legit. And then you can go around and tell people, "I went to the Alabama camp and I ran 2.7. It's verified." So those are just some schools of thought. Chez, I'm sure you have some good ideas too.
Yeah, those are all great comments. One of the reasons why the Florida State camp is great is that not only is Florida State there, a number of other schools are there. So, and all different levels. So you can have a Campbell, you can have a Washington, you can have an LSU. You can have a Georgia Southern. So there's all these different tiers of coaches, which you don't get at just that single college camp. Now, I'm not putting down the single college camp. I think those are great, especially if you've been personally invited to go to those camps. But it's nice to get a bang for your buck if you know a number of coaches are going to be there. So you get a number of eyes on you. And that could open the door to, a coach going out to see you at the next tournament, or getting personally invited to their camp, where you can work at that camp with some of the future recruits. But as far as like the best camps, we're doing our research right now for the summer camps. But hands down, the best winter camp is the Florida State camp, and there is a Las Vegas camp. It's slipping my mind. That is very, very similar to the Florida State camp, but it's held in Las Vegas, and that's during the winter time. If I can remember correctly, it might be in December or January. But we'll be putting an article out soon on some of the best summer camps that you can go to. Just give us a couple weeks to do some research, and you'll have that information.
Hey, one other thought, too, is I know there's camps and then there's clinics, and some of these are 4-hour events. And it depends on what you're trying to do. Are you trying to get better? Are you trying to improve? Camp can help you there. If you're trying to get exposure and seeing, these camp clinic things, PGF does a series of good ones, and I'm high on those because they have really good coaches there, like Dean and Gary Fawcett. Marty Tyson will be there. Brett Denayo of Explosion. So I've seen, and there's tons of coaches there. And that's another thing. Look and see if there's some of these top organizational coaches, like Mike Stith of the Bat Busters will do a camper clinic, or Marty Tyson of the Angels will do something. If you go one of those and you get seen, it might not be a college coach, but even if it's a high level club coach, that can put you on the radar. And they talk to, like Brett Denayo is one of the most connected guys. He works for PGF, runs Explosion. But, if he's doing a camp, Explosion's doing a camp, I'd go to it, because they will have 30, 35 different colleges there, because these coaches trust these club coaches. So look for high organizational camps and clinics too, because they draw a lot of college coaches.
Great point, Brentt. Just to reiterate, before you decide to sign up for a camp, kind of sit down and talk about what you're looking to get out of that experience, and that'll help make your decision. Okay, last question, Brentt. There's a lot of pitchers in the Hot 100, 2021 Hot 100. How do you think this is going to affect this year's PGF Nationals and WFC outcomes?
That's a great question. I think what's going to happen is the pitchers probably have the upper hand at this point. What will happen is they will start playing a lot of these tournaments and events early in the season, and I think they'll start to get almost like scouting reports on them. And I think what will happen is that the batters will catch up by the time PGF Nationals. I think it is. You and I went back and forth on this last week. I think there are a lot of really good pitchers in the 2021 class. But if we're talking just about this class or any class, I think that the pitching is going to dominate early, and then I think the hitters, as they see these pitchers a couple times, they'll cycle through some of the same tournaments. Some teams will play the same teams. I think they'll get a little bit better read, and I think it'll even out by the time PGF Nationals comes around. There's great hitters in this class too.
Yeah, I'm very, very excited to see the talent this summer. I'll be at WFC and PGF Nationals. Brentt, you'll be at PGF Nationals, so we'll get to see firsthand some of these players compete in the most competitive environment all summer. Well, Brentt, thanks so much for joining us. And just remember, we are not done with the Hot 100 yet. We are counting down to the number one spot, and you'll find out on Friday who the number one player in the 2021 class is. And very, very excited. The level of talent is it's awesome. So, Brentt, thanks so much for joining us. Brittany, you're great.
Thanks, Chaz. Thanks,
and thank you guys. And just remember, we'll be back next week. So tune in to the Hot 100, and we'll break down the Hot 100 class and what you can expect this summer. See you guys.